Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to the Sisters Interview. My name is Ashaxi. I am a member of the Order of the Laurel from the Kingdom of Vontier, and I have two co-hosts tonight. Rifkin is my sister. She is a Knight Pelican and Lion of Vontier, and then we have Sir Kelwyn from Artemisia. She is a Knight Pelican Griffin of Artemisia. Yes, and our guest tonight is Duchess Inga. She is a Duchess, Pelican Laurel.
The Order of Avacal, which is like the line of Vontier.
I had my suspicions, but I didn't do my homework. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So welcome.
Thank you.
So we usually start off with your origin story, but I'm going to throw you a little bit of a loop today. Last night when I interviewed Fia, she sung herself in a little kind of theme song. And I was thinking up theme songs for you, but I think you have your own. So what would be your theme song if you had an introductory theme song for the interview?
So it's funny. I think if I was going to have like a theme song, if it was a show, it might be different. But the song that I actually sing in my head, especially when I'm about to go into a tournament or something like that, where I need to sort of amp myself up, is my own version of the song from Clerks. So in my head, I sing, "Here comes Inga, she's a berserker." And it just always wraps me right up. So.
Thank you for doing that.
That was amazing.
Thank you. It's okay. It always gets me going. So,
yay! Now we're all going to be a berserker. So, what is your origin story?
So my relationship with the SCA actually is kind of funny because I initially found the SCA when I was 19 and I went into this park and there's all these guys in steel armor and looking pretty cool, doing all sorts of, the smashy, the pretty standard stuff for, when people first encounter the SCA. And I went up to one of the guys and he was very tall and very sort of Thor-like. So I confess it was a little bit of sort of, ooh. And so I went up to talk to him and he's like chatting me up and telling me all about the SCA. And I said, the fighting is amazing. Like the fighting is super cool. And he goes, yeah, we don't allow women to fight in the SCA.
What?
Yeah. And so I just said, cool. And I left. Like I walked away because to me, I'm like, I don't want anything to do with a society that's like that. And honestly, I always thought medieval knights were pretty hella cool. My mom's a huge medieval historian. So that was it. And so it was probably, 5-6 years later, I was in LARPs. I did tons of different LARPs, ridiculousness. And the fellows that I was LARPing with they just kept not coming out as much, right? They started being away for big events. And what they were doing is they were also going to the SCA. So of course I asked them what they're doing and they tell me all about it. And I said, yeah, I met those guys, but I hear you guys don't let women fight. And the person I said this to, which is actually Count Renard the Wild, who's my household father, he's like, now that's garbage. That guy's completely full of it. And then he described me, he goes, oh no, that guy's an ass. And so then of course, I thought it was completely amazing. And I, like them, was sort of mixing my time between my insane LARP every weekend being silly and ridiculous and the SCA. And eventually I just had to decide where my heart lay, and the SCA is where it was. And
okay, before we go any further with the SCA, we have to see your origin in the LARP. So I am going to share some beautiful pictures. There we go. There's the first one. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
So that LARP, we wanted to, it was very fancy D&D. And so I'm dressed up as a satyr. So what you can't see in the picture is I had little fake hoofs that I'd made to fit onto my boots so that I would look like a little satyr walking down the path. And underneath that big cloak, it was a little tiny tail. So I would like flip back my cloak and wiggle my tail. And I look very serious and intense here, but it was just ridiculous. And I'd like to tell you this is the most ridiculous thing I ever wore. It's not, it's just one of the best pictures. For this one, I was at a LARP where I was actually one of the actors, because for ours, they sometimes would have people that were part of advancing the plot. And so I was the Valkyrie that had the horn, and I was like a major plot device. You had to find a way to get me to give you the horn. And the armor was, hell, that thing chafed me. I learned in that moment how important it was to have armor that fit you well. That thing chafed me like it was its full-time job. by the end of the event, I was just basically made of ouch. But I looked really impressive. And the horn was paper mache, so it looks like I'm being crazy super mighty, and it weighed like nothing. Yeah, it was.
It looks like right here is really awful.
Super completely awful. Yeah.
Oh, yuck.
All right, there we go.
But great picture. So it just always cracks me up. And so that's how I got started. Was honestly, that's one of the funny things about getting into the SCA is the part I love best about LARPing, to be completely transparent, was the costumes. So I was always coming up with these ideas like, next LARP, let's be giant frogs, or next LARP, let's be bats, or like I was always coming up with something wacky. And so when I joined the SCA, I actually had pretty cool outfits. They weren't particularly period, but I didn't necessarily look like a noob because I had all of these crazy outfits from being in LARPs. And I was in like 3 or 4 different LARPs. I was in a werewolf LARP, and I was in a vampire LARP, and then D LARP. Oh no, I was just like such a nerd, just an absolutely robust nerd. I still am. It's really visible in those pictures. So that's how I got started.
Nice.
We like to pretend dressing up in Viking age clothing is not dorky.
I fully embrace my dork. I always have. I actually posted most of those pictures on my Facebook page because I'm a big fan of embracing all the bits of you, and that includes some pretty ludicrous history on my part, and I'm super good with it.
So when you started in the SCA, it sounds like the fighting hooked you in. Was that sort of what you concentrated on first?
So it was interesting because I first started just being really a dabbler. The guys that I knew, the Lost Vikings, they all were just a mercenary household. And when I first started, not that long after I started, I was in a really bad accident. I was hit as a pedestrian on a crosswalk, and I was in recovery for that for quite a few years. So I had wanted to fight, and I couldn't. I was broken. And so what I started doing is I'm a clever girl. I started building sweat equity with the Vikings so that when I was ready to fight, they would build me armor. So I sewed gamazons, and I made garb, and I just basically made anything that the guys were short of, which of course greatly endeared me to them. But it also meant that when I was finally better and I said, I need gear now, they had me in armor in like 3 months. It was actually really pretty amazing. They absolutely made good on that. So it was the fighting that hooked me, but I played without fighting for a while because I was too broken. I did archery for a bit. The weird thing is that with my injury, archery actually made it worse. So I'm probably one of the only people that started doing archery, and then it bothered my body too much, so I had to switch to heavy. So that's
Interesting.
the only person that has ever happened to. And once I got into fighting, I was hooked. The fellows deal was, as long as I was willing to be in wars in the shield wall, they would support me in anything else that I wanted. And it was pretty cool. They always were really, just really welcoming for female fighters. And so people talk about, that barrier. There never was that barrier. I mean, in fairness, I'd known them a long time. So I was more, Inga as opposed to a girl person who wanted to be in gear, in fairness, but it was never a barrier for me.
Excellent.
And how long were you fighting before you chose to officially squire to somebody?
I was fighting for quite a while, not at any kind of at a pretty meager level. I started fighting quite a bit more after I first reigned in Avacal. I feel like based on Ludwiga's rules, I have to drink every time I mention that I reigned. So.
Well, why don't we get it out of the way at the beginning? How many times have you reigned, and where, and as princess or queen?
So I have reigned if you include baronial, 5 times. So I was Princess of Avacal twice, Queen of Ontir, Queen of Avacal, and then I was Baroness of Borealis for 6 years. So I've actually done all of the possible royal roles that you can in the SCA, which I think is, I feel like it gives me kind of a kooky perspective, but also a neat perspective. I've seen it behind all of those aspects. So.
That's a long time to serve as Baroness.
Yes, it was. And the extra interesting part is I actually was Queen of Ontir in between. So our first 3 years, then after we'd been in as baronial couple, we then asked for permission to enter the crown list, which then Vic won, and we were king and queen, and then stepped down and we had a castellan in place while we were ruling. And then we immediately returned as Baron and Baroness. And so So that was, I would not recommend it. I'll be honest with you. We were pretty worn thin by the end. But it also was a pretty amazing experience. You see the SEA in a different way, I think, when you get those kind of experiences. So it definitely changed for me how the game looked and what I valued in it.
Awesome. So let's go back to the how long were you fight, who'd you squire to question.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So my first reign as princess, I had been fighting for a little bit. You know, it was something that I really loved, but I was still super new. And at that point, when I got to fight as princess and take the field with the army, I think it really kind of changed my relationship with fighting. And I'd always loved war because I joined a war household. I love being in the shield wall. That stuff still completely thrills me. But I started to see more of my interest in excelling at it. Honestly, because I felt a little embarrassed a few times about how the Princess of Avacal, while it was cool that I fought, because not a lot of princesses then did, but I was kind of rubbish. And so I really wanted to get better at it because I felt like if I'm going to be in that role, to have some prowess would be really good. Plus I was really enjoying it. And so that was, I think, 2001. And so then, you know, I had a number of people actually approach me about squiring in Avacal. I just didn't really have the right, it just wasn't right. You know what I mean? And I got some excellent advice at the time from Vic, which is don't squire to somebody until they're somebody that you aspire to be. So it's going to be really flattering to have someone come to you and offer you a belt, especially if you've not been fighting that long. But he had said, you know, wait till you find that perfect person. It was really good advice. And I don't know if Kelwan or Riff can experience this, but I think as a female fighter, especially if there aren't very many out there that tournament fight, you kind of end up being like a novelty item. And so I felt like there was people who wanted to squire me because, ooh, it's a girl who actually wants to be good. And I didn't want that. I didn't want it to be because it was novel. I wanted it to be because I had potential. And so in one of the very first crowns I ever went to in Ontier, I was fighting, getting geared up to fight. And I looked out onto the Squires tournament field and I actually saw Rifkin, who at the time was Sorsha, I believe.
Yes.
You're still Sorsha then. And I was watching her just tear people apart. And I'd never seen a female fighter fight like that because at that time, there were a lot of really good war fighters in Avacal, but there weren't very many tournament fighters that were really impressive. And I was just blown away. I'm like, that is who I want to be when I grow up. Like I knew in that moment. And it was actually quite a long time after that before we actually met and got to know each other. And so I think it was a lot of my wanting to be squired was actually because of Rifkin, because I saw the drive that she has and the dedication that she has, which of course we all know, because it's as evident as the nose on your face. But that was really inspiring to me because I've never done anything by half measures in my life, generally speaking. And so that kind of dedication just really appealed to me. Plus, I just loved that she was so dominating. And not from that, I liked seeing, girls who beat up on guys, because some people make that comment and I don't, that's not that, no disparagement to that, but that wasn't for me. It was just seeing somebody being so masterful in the field, because I've played a lot of contact sports. I've played hockey when I was a little girl. I played field hockey, and I never was a dainty creature on that field. I always was the person who, to be honest, I often got fouled out of games because I'm kind of a little bit aggressive and a bit of a brute. And I've gotten asked not to come back more than once to ball hockey because I'm too mean and I check people into the boards. So, but I never was somebody who's going to be delicate about it. And so seeing someone who was relatable to me, who was so dominant, was really inspiring. So Rifkin honestly was a big part of why I wanted to be a squire. And then thankfully that's how it worked out. So.
She asked, I said yes.
Although she had the best codicils ever. I was only going to be squired if I got rid of my awful stripy pants that were made out of lawn chair fabric to be transparent, but they were indestructible. I didn't want to make another pair. I'm like, these pants are always getting wrecked. I'm just going to make them out of this fabric that is literally bulletproof and then it'll be fine. But they were probably the ugliest thing known to man. And I had a really awful gamazon made out of a moving blanket that was bright yellow. And her rule was, I will squire you, but I need to never see those items on your person again.
I've never heard that story.
I totally forgot about that, but I think that's really funny because later on you come back to me and say, look, you need to look more knightly. and you were right, and I rose to the challenge.
Full circle.
Full circle.
So you just trained me so well that the lesson returned to you.
But that's what true fealty is, right? Like not that I really think we have like a fealty relationship, but
Sure.
But is the back and forth, right? Like you should be able to tell each other back and forth, what needs to happen. So
Absolutely. Well, it definitely is something I've never forgotten, because I still actually have those pants, because I don't think you can actually destroy them. They might actually outlast the earth. If there is some great cataclysm, there'll be cockroaches in those pants. But obviously I never wear them because that was a deal. But I still have them in sort of my memories of the SCA stash, and they still are, the knees are still solid. Like, I don't know what that fabric is made of, but we should probably take everything out of it, because
wow.
Kevlar pants or something.
probably. And they're just awful. They're like green and pink and red stripes. I mean, they're awful.
We
So,
have some fighting pictures of you, but I don't think we have any that go that far back. I could be
No.
wrong though. Let me look.
I'm not sure. I know I tried to find some old pictures, but I don't know if I have anything that old.
You
While
guys
she looks, Rifkin, you kind of briefly said something about your fealty arrangement. How does that work for the two of you, Inga, where you have reigned, but you're still a squire? How have you guys sorted that?
Well, so I was a royal peer pretty much right out of the gate. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but I got my AOA in November, and I was crown princess of or rather princess of Avacal, Tanista of Avacal, in the November. So aside from when I was really, really super dabbly, I've always been a royal peer. So even before we met, I already had ruled. And so it was already part of our sort of discussion. And I know that when Rifkin and I first talked, she had some apprehensions about that, about how would this relationship work when I'm a royal peer. And
you outranked me from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think the thing was that I always said to her, I might outrank you in that aspect, but when it comes to the field of combat, and when it comes to mastery, I absolutely do not. And to me, I'm one of those people that tend to swear fealty in the different sort of flavors in which my fealty was grown. So I swear as a laurel, I swear as a pelican, I swear as a royal peer, I swore as a baroness when I was baroness. And some people think that's sort of redundant, but to me, I've always felt like it reinforced the different ways in which I serve the game. And so to me, the one area where I definitively and still clearly do not outrank her is in martial combat. And so to me, there was never a conflict. Ultimately, too, all fealty goes to the crown. So to me, it's not a conflict. To me, we should never use people's fealty against them. It's one of those things that's always been a pet peeve of mine as a royal is when people make people feel bad about their fealty chain. And so we had a pretty honest discussion about it right out of the bat. I do remember, though, you wanted to wait to you asked me to wait in terms of my squiring with when I was ruling and all of that. So we waited until I wasn't when I was ruling, and I think it was after I got laureled.
Yeah, I can't remember the timing on that, but you got laureled right around the same time I got knighted.
Yeah.
But I also think, fealty is an interesting thing, but because she doesn't need me as a voice to the crown, and especially now that Avacal and Antir are not the same kingdom, it always has been more of a teaching relationship, and there is that give and take and back and forth, and I'm really a firm believer in treating everyone as your equal, or unless they're your way better, so I think we've always just had a mutual respect. So
Absolutely. Well, and for me, it was easy because I always held her above me as being so aspirational from meeting her. Like, she inspired me literally the first time I knew of her existence. So to me, it was never a challenge to have this relationship work.
You want to look at some fighting pictures? Most of them are when you're reigning, but they're pretty cool. So why don't I do that? All right. I'm going to have to flip through because we're going to go back to this one, and that's not really a fighting picture.
Well, I fought the armor, if that counts.
That does count. Oh, come on.
Kids, don't fight your armor.
I learned that lesson really, really early, way before the SCA. You can't fight your opponent if you're busy fighting your armor.
Oh, it doesn't want to scroll for me. So I'm going to fix it. You guys keep talking.
No worries.
Kellen, do you have any questions?
Yeah, because I'm not sure the flow, which flow you want to take this through, but so, because we've been talking about your fighting, you also do a lot of different art, and one of the things that's always blown my mind is you do so many different types of arts, and you do them so well. How do you invest so much time to get to that skill level when it's not just one or two things? How do you prioritize that?
That's a great question. Oh, you got the pictures up, Rifkin?
Yeah.
I love this picture. So I'm Queen of Antir here, and the person in front of me is Thorfinn of the West, who is, I mean, he's a legend on the warfield. And I actually received my Hasta Leonis as a result of my several years quest to lay stick on Thorfinn's person. Because anybody who's fought him knows that that is no small feat. And so I love this picture because I didn't actually manage to kill him in this moment, but it really encapsulates how really dedicated I was to trying to kill him. So, I love him dearly, but I really, really wanted to lay some hurt on him as well. So
I love that you're queen and you're in the front line. I think that's awesome.
thank you. It was actually one of the things that I think I drove Sven in particular crazy at the Estrella War where I was queen. Oh, you could hear all the time his voice going, "Seat of the Queen," because I kept taking off and disappear and charging into the fray. So again, I am not really good at the sit back and be quiet kind of thing.
So tell us about your love for the axe.
So the axe, I'd never really thought about other weapons. When I first started, everybody just said, "Will you fight sword and board?" That was the deal. And then I was gifted a pair of axes by Jeffrey the Rogue down in the Summits. And I was like, "Oh, that's neat." And what had happened is I had been playing at Honor War, and they had a tournament where you had to fight with whatever somebody pulled. So I'd played with an axe in like one engagement, and afterwards I had apparently come out and said that was super fun. And I remember it being fun, but like clearly Jeffrey had heard of this, so he gifted me these axes. And the first time that I played with them, I got to be honest with you, I have fun when I fight anyways, but something about axes is so ridiculously, it's like the bonkiest, goofiest. Like I will be honest, every time I hit someone with it, in my head I go bonk because it's just so awesome. And I also love that. I mean, it's also a very practical weapon. I mean, I use a bearded axe, so it often drops past people's sword or shield edge. You know, I mean, it's very effective. There's a lot of people. I know Njal down in the West. I'm the first person who ever dented his helmet with one of my axes. So, you know, like I really love them, but most of it's because, like I said, when I'm running around the warfield, I'm laughing my butt off because to me, all I can hear is bonk as I hit people. So.
I love this photo.
That pointy finger picture. That's awesome.
Which one?
The pointy finger picture, which I think is the one going
That
back.
one.
Yeah, that's great. As queen, I was actually saying somebody needs to go over and kill those people because we had people that were flanking us, and I really love war strategies. It's one of the things because I got in as part of a war company, but also because of my love of history. I always loved the strategy of war, so it's one of those things where I was really glad that Vic was glad to let me do that on the field when I first started because I like actually commanding on the war field. And so that's a great picture of me basically being a bossy pants on the field and saying, "You guys need to go over and kill that person." I love this picture too. I love that picture.
That's a great picture.
This is great though. This is one of my favorite pictures. That's the first crown that I entered with that kit. That's the kit that Arnsbjorn made for me. And he was like, "If you want to be taken seriously as a knight, you need to look knightly on the field." And so this was one of the first times where I got to have kit. I mean, I made a lot of my own armor before that. This is the first time that I had kit that really made me feel on the outside the way I feel on the inside. Plus, I love fighting with him.
It's gorgeous.
That you fight with that is, you know, really loves having you by their side on the field. That's just magic. So.
And I just have to say, you're wearing armor. You're not wearing women's armor. You're wearing armor because there's no such thing. That's women's armor. It's just armor. And that it looks really good.
It's
Thank you.
women's armor when a woman owns it.
Precisely.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Well, and it was actually kind of a big argument when I first got into armor because the fellows in my household were like, right, so we want you, you're little, I mean, compared to them, I want you to be safe. And they built me basically this tank and said, there, all of your stuff will be safe. And I'm like, I can't even move my arms, guys. And so I had to figure out what would work. And all of it came down to stop trying to build me armor that looks like a girl and start building me an armor that protects the body I have. And so that's one of the things I love about Orange Barn is he built me armor that is armor first. So I love this picture of us, you and I on the field, Rifkin. I absolutely love that picture.
Yeah, that's like 3 helmets ago. That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's
I didn't even
before I
recognize
got my really nice armor.
What'd you say, Kelwin?
I didn't even recognize the helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
I don't
didn't
remember
know the
that.
body armor, I wouldn't have known it was you.
You know what it is? Every time I make the picture big, it doesn't want to scroll anymore for me. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And we can go back to Kelwin's art question if we want.
Oh, sure. You know, for me, I think one of the things that's always been part of who I am is that something being new doesn't scare me. I mean, to be fair, I've been an artist most of my life. I think I was in art classes before kindergarten. My mother's an artist, and so I always was given that outlet. And my mom always used to say, every different tool or medium you use is just a different tool. Like, are you afraid of grabbing a screwdriver versus a hammer? No. So why should it be any different? And so in the SCA, you know, people say, oh, I was thinking about trying soapstone. And then I just go off and I do it. And people say, I don't know how you can just go off and do it. But in my mind, it's just a different tool and a different medium. So I was a commission artist for years in my 20s where I actually lived, not entirely, because obviously that's tricky, but I lived off to some degree off of my art. And then I have a degree in medieval art history. And so I've studied a lot of these things, but it actually wasn't until the SCA that I paired those. So one of the very first scrolls that I ever made, people sort of comment, I can't believe it's your first one. I had never done calligraphy before that, as weird as it seems, because those are the worst bangs on the history of the planet. But
I remember that, Inga.
so, you know, for me, I think everything I've done, it's just been because my brain intrinsically goes, how hard could it be? It's just another tool. So, so I do, you know, calligraphy and illumination, and everybody knows that. That's my Lauraling. But I also, I mean, I do glass work, I do metal work, I do pierce work, I have done leather work, I do soap carving or soapstone carving, I do wood carving. You know, honestly, for me, it's just a matter of, I love this. This was the knighting scroll for Eric Rugensen up here in Avacal. That is 56 pounds of stone. That's a
Holy cow.
huge rock.
Are you using like hand carving tools, or are you using machine powered carving tools, or a mix of both?
That's all hand carved. I don't like to use a Dremel. The vibration's weird on my hands. So all of the carving that I do is by hand, but soapstone is pretty easy to carve. So it's not as though I would be doing carving of things like limestone or something like that. This is my very first entry at Kingdom Arts and Sciences ever. I entered I've always been a big fan of better to do something simple well than something complex poorly. And so I wanted to enter. And so I did a little wooden horse. You find them in all the digs. And I researched it down to like, is it exactly the right genus of tree? And I used, you know, sand to sand it and all of this. I just like made it down to like as perfect as I could. And I remember I actually won a prize for this. But in fairness, it was for the cutest entry. So it's not quite as cool. Whereas
I love that you displayed it in shavings too, because it adds that extra, like, this is handcrafted.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you. This is my very first peerage scroll.
Wow.
This is a royal peerage for Ivar Nasny, and I'd never done gilding before, and I wanted to do something really fabulous, so I researched it, and this is the first piece I ever gilded. What's really cool about this is I saw it recently, and this was done a long time ago. This is from like 37.
David and Groa there.
Yeah, and it still looks really great. Like, it kind of tickles me to see it up close, because I can see when I go visit their house, that the gilding is crackled just like it is in the manuscripts. There's a little nerdy part of me that just loves that my technique and the result has aged in the same way. It's one of those things.
That's pretty awesome.
This is the very first scroll I ever made. When we were Prince and Princess the first time, I wanted to give all the Baron and Baronesses something cool because I was so incredibly new when I reigned the first time, like super, super new. And so I wanted to give all the Baron and Baronial couples a thank you. There were only 3, so that makes it a little easier. But I wanted to hand make them each a gift to thank them. And so this was the very first scroll I ever did in the SCA. And it was the first time I ever did calligraphy. I mean, obviously I practiced before this version, obviously, but it was the first time that I'd taken my modern painting skills and my degrees understanding of medieval manuscripts, because my thesis was actually in Gothic marginalia, which is images in the margins of manuscripts, where I'd paired the two. And so I'm just incredibly proud of it. I also cringe because the calligraphy is just, to me, all I can see is all the flaws. But this was my very, very first scroll.
I've seen a lot of people's first scrolls, and this is nothing to cringe about.
Yeah, it's definitely beyond most first scrolls.
Yes.
Well, and I'll be honest, for the longest time, I didn't share with a lot of people because people would be kind of intimidated by that, and I didn't want to do that. And I do have a huge art background, right? So it's not as though I was, grass green. I just had never done it in the SCA. So
Right.
But
You had
to
some-
compare,
Some
with
skill-
your art background and everything, and when you look at that scroll compared to this one, which is one of the newer ones, there is a huge difference.
the best one.
Oh, I love this scroll. I mean, part of it is because I love you, Kelwyn. So for everybody who hasn't already figured it out, this is actually Kelwyn's knighting scroll. But this is one of my favorite pieces for a bunch of reasons. One of the things that I've always struggled with, and this is because I have a background in modern art, is portraiture, because making it look like medieval portraits, but still making it look like the person and letting go of my modern aesthetic is just so brutal. It's like, it's so hard. And so I'm really proud of the fact that it doesn't look super modern. Like I'm really proud of that. I also, the white work on this with the pink and the blue, because Kelwyn loves those two colors. Like I got to be honest, I'm super love it. I especially like the bit at the top with the sun. And I think that's really, really pretty. Like I just love the balance of the white work on it. And that is about 2.5 inches tall, right? Just to give people a sense of scale. I also love that your portrait is recognizable, Rifkin. Like getting the portraits to look enough like the person, but still have them fit with the scroll. That was kind of a super fun thing. Also, Kelwyn just about killed me because she wanted all these different devices on one scroll, and there's like 90,000 different colors in all of these things. Like having them on the same document and not look like a dog's breakfast was like,
You just said to throw out everything that I would possibly want. I didn't expect everything to end up on there.
I got everything though. I got it all. You said you want it there. It's on there, baby. So it's also a really huge scroll, so that helps. But yeah, and so this is one of those things though that's kind of neat. Is I had gone to Europe that right before that summer. I landed from home on the Sunday night and started the scroll. Now I'd done up the concept, but this was done in 7 days because I had to fly out to her knighting on the Friday. So this was accomplished in seven days, and I did a job, but
Incredible.
I didn't sleep. And this is how big it is. I'm really proud of. That's a great picture. Plus, I like the look in your face, like, really mine.
I still feel that way when I walk by it on my wall.
I promised you though, Kelwyn, when we first met at Estrella after we were fighting, I said, if you ever get knighted, when you get knighted, I will make your scroll. So
Yep, and I held you to it.
awesome.
It was such a good day.
Yeah, it was an amazing day. And this is Gemma Mina of Kuramos Keeps, her Laureling scroll. And I'm really proud of it because all the little figures are actually as well things references that are to her background. So like she does glass blowing, so there's the little blowy things that make the glass go, and there's her a reference to the Griffin of Avacal because she originally started in Avacal. And if you go to the little portrait, there's a picture of her holding a stained glass, but it's a stained glass of a period beehive glass bead furnace. So, and then it's got a picture of a little doggy next to her. So all of the little bits and pieces are meant to be little nods to who she is. And I think when I do scrolls, and this is definitely one of the things that's the privileged part of being a peer, and sort of, having a fairly solid reputation for creating nice scrolls, is I get often called to do cool things for people that I love, right? And so then I can also put in things like, she's holding beads and those are little bead sticks that are used, the mandrels, for turning the glass, and you can see the little glass blower because she also blows glass. She doesn't just turn it, right? So knowing the person allows you to create it on a level that is really challenging if it's for a stranger. So all of the scrolls that I've done in the past couple of years have been from people that I know well. And so there's always these little bits and pieces, these little personal touches embedded into the background. And for me, that's where the best part of making art is.
Did
Is
you
the
make
satyr
her?
leg? Oh, sorry.
Is she a snail person down there?
Yeah, that's a little snail person.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
And is the satyr legs a secret shout out to your cosplay?
It super is, because she knows all about my ludicrous history. So it's funny thing is, she was my head of our retinue on our first and second read, I think, in Avacal, definitely for our first, and or maybe it was the second. Anyways, doesn't matter. But I remember at one point we were chatting about scrolls, and she said to me, and so this is like years before she gets made, she goes, if I ever get made a peer, I want a heart-shaped scroll, because there's some really cool books that open up like this. And so when she got placed on Vigil for Laurel, I like immediately called and said, whatever plan you have, my plan's better. And so and so fortunately they let me, and so I got to make this for her, and so I'm deeply proud of it. This is, go ahead.
Yeah, it has it. Well, we'll come back to it after the scrolls.
This is a Pelican scroll that I did for Daniel DeBrock and Avacal. And this is one of the ones that always makes me laugh. So I don't know if you can see the way the capitals are done at the top of the screen. There's big, little, big, little. That's the way that style of scroll is done. It's called the Winchester. But what happened is the scroll made it through his whole ceremony, signed and sealed, and I'd left out the little A in Avacal. So the way that the Avacal's the little blue letter added in, got added afterwards. They were holding it up in the middle of his ceremony, after he was made. And I look up and there's a picture and you can see, and I'm like, oh, because in that exact moment, all I could see was that I missed the A and it said Avcal. And I was like, oh my God. So, but this one's also really fun because it's got all sorts of little tiny things. Like he's got a spoon because he holds the Order of the Golden Spoon, and he's wearing clothes that represent his cooking clothes. The little scroll that goes up to the heraldry is because he's super involved in the heraldic arts, and that was actually part of the service that he was elevated for. So there's all these little buried things for him. And this is also one of the first times that I used orange. You've emboldened me to use colors that are a little bit richer. And one of the things that's funny about the scroll is they do tend to use a lot of color. And I usually edit that out because orange is not one of the colors that I've always found easy to make balance. And you always pull it off. And so when I was looking at this, I'm like, I want to make it really faithful. This guy deserves something that's super period. I'm going to do the orange. And so before I put in all the shading, I got all the colors blocked in. And I remember going to David, like, this is awful. This is the worst thing. It's going to look horrible. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like, you're good. Just keep going. And now it's absolutely one of my favorites because the color balance is like, I really love it, but I generally don't include orange in my scroll design. So, but you were my inspiration in that, Rifkin, because you pull together colors that are so beautifully play off each other, and you take risks with colors that I tend to be a little bit more careful. I stick to my red, green, blue. That's nice, and I know what's going to happen with that, right? So this was a little nod to also your amazing color choices.
I'm very reckless with color, so.
Well, you're brave though, and that's amazing.
But I love the orange in this because it gives it this nice pop. I love it. Anyway.
Well, I love that you picked up on that because it's one of those things that I adore. This was made for the first Laurel made in Avacal after we became a kingdom. And the other side is all done in the dye resist, but it's done in an ostrich egg, but it's done as in a proper Pasenka egg. And the recipient, Katerina Dragonweaver, one of the things that she's known for is her research into period decorative eggs. So a friend of hers, Svava, actually created the art on the back and then gave it to me to do the scroll. So this is her scroll text done And I don't know if you're very familiar with an ostrich egg, but they're like painting a golf ball. This,
Yeah.
I've never cursed at something so much in my entire life.
They're highly textured.
I had to hand paint every single letter.
You see all those dimples?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I had to hand paint every single letter with a little teeny tiny brush because every other thing that I usually do to put words on surface would not work. So I'm really proud of how this turned out, but I've never cursed so much. I'm sure there's a blue cloud above our house still as a remnant of that project. Yeah.
Your A.
I love this one. This summer, there was this huge idea of doing Scribble from home, the big Scribble War, and it was an inter-kingdom Scribble War that was held to sort of give people something to do. I think partly because we were thinking it wasn't going to be that long that we were going to be back together, but still, it was a really cool idea. And the idea was that everybody would do a single letter and then it would all be brought together. And so this was my entry on behalf of the Kingdom of Avacal. And it is 2.5 by 3 inches. It is tiny, tiny. Like the little foot is is smaller than a dime. So it's a really, really tiny piece, and it's done on real vellum. So I'm really proud of it. And I won my category, little brag. I'm super proud of it. I think it was super fun, and it's kind of a nice memento of sort of soldiering through a rough time as well.
So the next picture is going to be of costuming. So we can go to Fioc's question now, and we can
Okay.
Fioc asks, and I have to do sort of a Fioc voice for this.
Fioc asks.
Fioc asks, how did Inga train to be such a tenacious conversationalist?
He's evil. There's this awesome story. We were at Honor War again, and I think that's actually where I met Fioc. I could be wrong, but I think that's where I met. Certainly, it's my most memorable time with him. We were all sitting around the fire and we were chatting, and he always jokes that you just can't quite get out of a conversation with me. So he'd be like, "I got to head to bed." I'm like, "Cool," and I'd start talking, and then half an hour later, he's like, "No, I really got to go to bed." I'm like, "Okay," and then I keep talking, and he goes, "I really need to go." I said, "I'm not making you stay," and then he'd stay, and we keep talking, and he goes, "No," and he threw his cup to the ground and raced away, like, before she can trap me. Just completely raced.
Oh, he's obviously never carpooled to an event with you and tried to leave.
Could that be Erica?
Erica still has never forgiven me for that. We were at, I think it was Sport of Kings, and she wanted to go, and I wanted to do some more fights, and then I wanted to do some other fights, and then I did pickup fights with Skaggy. And she finally pulled up in the car right next to the Eric and sat on the hood of the car, or leaned on the hood of the car, and just glared at me. And then when I came off the field, she goes, "Oh, no, you don't get to change out of your armor. You can just suffer." And she made me drive for the first 2 hours in my armor until I think the smell was what won the day. But she was like, "Oh, you can just deal." Like, she wanted to go probably, a zillion hours before that moment. And she, I've never been glared at quite like that. Like, she was like tick tock. And so, yeah, we got out of, I think it was the Dales or something like that. And we got out of the car. And of course, I'm just crippled now because I went directly from fighting to sitting in my buckled up armor all that time. And I think I just about landed on my face because nothing would unbend. And she was like, "You can just deal. I don't care." So I apparently am not good at goodbyes. So I got nothing. But that's the story behind Fioc. He actually, one time we were at a party and he connected with Master Sean, and apparently he considers Sean, I believe, to be also a conversational sort of trap. And he's like, "I'm going to introduce the two of you, and then who knows what will happen." And then what happened is we just talked all night to no one else, and it was awesome. So Fioc's although Fioc
allowed to creep away.
Totally. Yeah, he was just like, "I need to," just boom, threw his cup and ran. He's also Fioc, though. The reason I got he's mean because he knows I'm like that, and he gave me one of my most memorable moments with His Grace Duke Dak. So can I tell that story?
Oh, tell the Dak story, definitely.
So we were at Sport of Kings, the first Sport of Kings, and I was the Tanista of Avacal, the Princess of Avacal, and Fioc is like, "Okay, you got to come over and you got to meet Duke Dak. And of course, Dak is like, I mean, he's still one of my peer fears. Like he's one of my only peer fears. And because I'm generally not afraid of people at all, but he was like, oh, it's Dak. And so he just was a legend. And so I'm like, oh my God, it's Dak. So I'm all the way over as I'm walking, Fiat's carrying my chair, and I should have guessed he was smiling way too big for this to just be like, okay. So he's carrying, and I'm thinking, what am I going to talk to him about? Like, oh, okay, I got a plan. He was there fighting, and you didn't get to fight him because he only fought in the morning. So you gotta say something nice about that, because it was so cool he was there fighting, but you didn't get to fight him. Tell him how much that would have meant to you. So he puts down my chair and he's like, Inga, Dak, Inga, go. And then he disappears. And I should have known right away that something was up. And so I look at him, and Dak, in his usual very quiet way, just sort of waits for me to say something. And so my brain's like, think of something. Okay, tell him about how much you wish you could have fought him. That'll be really bright. Just, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And what I said, instead of, Your Grace, it would have been amazing to fight with you today, what I said was, it's a pity you don't fight anymore. And then His Grace, who is renowned for his stoicism, chewed my butt out for 45 minutes. And I was like, but I just, and he just, and I'm like, okay, people say he's quiet. That is hogwash. That man is quiet. And then he finished, and they bowed very politely, because he's very polite, Your Highness. And then he left. And I'm like, oh.
Oh.
And that was Fioc's fault. Thank you very much, Fioc.
Have you gotten over your peer fear of Dak?
No, actually, because so we were all at Sven and Signy's one year over the holidays, and Dak was there, and we were talking about how we all first met. And so I think, oh, this is brilliant. I'm still incredibly nervous around the man, but he's just, he's been helping in the kitchen. Maybe I'm not so totally freaked out by him. And so I relay this story, and Dak looks at me and goes, I'd have thought you would have kept that to yourself. And Sven is dying. Like, I think he fell off his chair. Like, yeah, that's pretty awesome. And then Sven actually used that against me again a couple of crowns later. He and I were wandering around one night for whatever reason, and we came across like this, just an astounding array. It was like Fioc was there, and Thorin, and oh goodness, who else was there? Just like, and Dak, obviously, and just a whole bunch of these legends of Vontier. There's like 5 or 6 of them all standing there, looking amazing and just talking stuff. And Sven goes, we should go over and say hi. And I should have known, because he gets that look when he's up to shit too, right? So we go over, and he says hi to them, and his, Dak is there, and I look at him, and I'm like, hello, Your Grace. So nice to see you tonight. You and all your ducal people. And Sven goes, you really do get stupid around him. Like, in front of them. And of course, I go bright red, and I just disappear. So,
I love it.
yeah. I'm now more comfortable around him, mostly because he, I think, has taken pity upon me, and he now says words to me first, so that I don't completely come unraveled like a crappily knit sweater in his presence. So I appreciate that he is kind and understands that I am reduced to just little trembling knees and a complete awe in his presence every time I see him. So
Funny.
thank you.
Oh, thanks, Fioc, for that. That was so kind.
Love you, Fioc. Thank you. Super getting you when you're on here.
Ooh, pays back, bitch.
Awesome.
So tell us about reigning. You've done like the trifecta, right? You've been princess, you've been baroness, you've been queen. Which job is the hardest? And which one is the most fulfilling? Are they the same?
So first, they're not the same at all. They really are not. And they're all awesome, but in really different ways. Like, I got to tell you, standing on the field representing a kingdom is just magic. Like, the first time I was queen on the field of Estrella, leading the army, I'll be transparent. I cried in my helmet. I was so honored when they all saluted me, and then we took the field. I cried. I did. And then having them cheer afterwards and being their fellows in arms on the field, like there are a few things that are cooler than that. Getting to stand at the Penzik ceremonies as the first queen of Avacal to attend Penzik, like, there's some moments as queen that are really outstanding, really outstanding.
Maybe I should share some more pictures.
But one of the things that is very different about that is with being queen as well as with being princess, your time is short. And so the things that you're able to do, because I'm a planner, I got ideas. And your ability to execute those things as queen or princess it's hard. You have such a short window. And so that was one of the things that was so rich about being Baroness, is because you can have an idea and actually see it come to fruition. I love that picture. And there's Fiok, yay! I really do love him so much, but he teases me mercilessly. So this is me, queen, and I think we're obviously sitting with the shields for Thierry, but and that's those little fighting boots I used to love so much, but that I used to wipe out all the time. There's nothing inspiring about a queen that lands flat on her butt.
No traction at all.
Zero, none. No, they were the worst. So they're just very different. Being princess is different than being a queen, because when you're princess, you have a queen that, oh, I love this picture. I mean, what three incredible ladies to have ruled with, especially, anyways, it just,
I saw this picture, it made me choke up a little bit.
Yeah, me too. And she gave me a knife at Estrella from being on the field, because she and I got to fight next to each other. And this is a really, really special picture. It really, you create bonds with people who rule at the same time as you that are just, you can't quite explain. It's really, truly special. The big difference though for this is that when you're queen, the only people you answer to in terms of like what, the rules and all of that is a society, right? There's no buffer between you and that governing body. And so everything, good or bad, it sort of ends at your desk. And when you're princess, there are things that you can go, I'm not going to tackle this. I'm going to let the crown deal with it. And so this is awesome. Sorry. And so, being princess versus being queen is very different. There's a level of responsibility when you're queen of a kingdom that is not the same when you're princess of a principality. This is awesome. I got to do the children's reading hours. I'm reading Where the Wild Things Are to the kids at Ontario West War. And I'm wearing my rapier kit. When I reign, I also fight. I take the field with the rapier fighters because I feel like a lot of times the heavy is the show. And I've always taken it very seriously that I represent all the disciplines in as much as possible. So I've just come off of the rapier field here and gone to read to the kids, reading Where the Wild Things Are. And if you've ever seen me storytell, I'm pretty animated. So this is a hilarious picture. But I think the big difference between the three of them is the time that you have to make a difference. And as Baroness, I had time to bring about things that were cool and wonderful because there's time to plan and have it evolve.
I just don't understand why sometimes it'll move for me and sometimes it won't. There we go. Your Grace, somebody sent me a picture of you in the stripy pants and the yellow. Can I post it in the? Are you going to take care of it?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. They're the
Right.
like seriously the worst pants in the history of everything.
But they're still tough.
Oh, you could still wear them. They're just like, there's no color in the knees, but they're still intact. They're not even patched. That's how badass that fabric is.
You guys look so magnificent here.
Thank you. This is actually really kind of amazing because what a lot of people don't know is that because Avacal at that time was realigning its calendar, we won the first weekend of June and we stepped up the first weekend of July. So our garb here was accomplished in 4 weeks by the ladies that crafted for us, both in Avacal and on Tier. Several of the pieces are actually contributed by artisans from non-Tier. but so proud of the way we looked that day. And it was ruling with someone that you love is such a magical thing. It's definitely different than ruling with a friend. I know enough people who've done that. They're all amazing, but ruling with someone that is just completes you is truly special. And he and I are so aligned in how we look at the SEA. This is awesome. Getting to be at Pennsic, because we were allies with the West at Pennsic. So I got to see Hansa a ton, and I like super love him. He's just fabulous. And his queen was absolutely lovely, lovely human being. But the shenanigans into which we got with Hansa was that Pennsic was going to be awesome anyways, but this was epic. So this is us lined up waiting for the opening ceremony, opening court for Pennsic War. And that's us waiting to go in. My handsome husband and our banner. I'm super proud. It was just so very cool to be the first crown to attend Pennsic. That's pretty neat. This was me attending 50 years. So in between us winning in June and us stepping up in July, I already was the Avacal historian. So I had arranged to go to 50 year and set up this huge display because all the kingdoms were supposed to show. And I was really mindful of Avacal looking like we didn't really have our poop in a group. I was really concerned that we would look at like this, still the baby kingdom trying to figure out what we're doing. And so I went all out. And so I had a bunch of it shipped out. But so in between us winning and then stepping up, I also organized all this and then went to 50 year and spent like a week of my time at 50 year.
And weren't you also one of the 50 artists that they displayed at 50 year as well?
Yes, I was actually. I was asked to display. One of the pieces I actually displayed was the egg, and you can see it in the background, but I had pictures of the egg displayed as well. So yeah, that was a busy 2 months for me. My husband is absolutely made of patience. That's all I have to say.
Were you a Pelican before that, or did you get your Pelican after that? I can't remember.
I was a Pelican before this. I was made a Pelican in 2012. This is a really special picture. So one of the things that was really neat is that our crown couldn't make it to the opening ceremony for 50 year. And I was already attending just to be their historian. So because I was the crown princess, I got invited to be part of the opening ceremony for 50 year. And so I got to meet 3 of the founders. And I'm notoriously soggy. I think everybody's heard, a million stories of me weeping, but I wept to meet them, like to meet people who started something we love so much that, I met my husband in the SDA, right? We met in armor, so much of the richness of the life I live now is because of that. So I cried to meet them, and I was so honored to get to chat with them and tell them how much they had made a difference. And getting to be in that first ceremony and having Diana the List read the notice that went out, that was pretty incredible. Again, when you're crowned, you get to experience things that you're just never going to experience otherwise. So this is a really special moment. Plus they're super cool people. Like they're just like us, they're just dorky. And it was funny because of course in typical me fashion, I'm like gushing all over them. And they're like, oh, we're just really glad you enjoy it. And I'm sure they're thinking, wow, she's a lot. It was very, very cool. So does that answer your question though about what's the differences? Because
yeah, I think it does.
The one thing that's a constant though is that all 3 of them allow you to acknowledge people's awesomeness. And there's lots of cool stuff about ruling. It's also a ton of work. Anybody who's done it knows that it is like you get to have fun on the weekends. You also do lots of stuff on the weekends, but oh my God, there it is right there. Oh, can you see those pants? They're like somebody's lawn chair animated and turned into slacks.
Now that I've seen them, I do remember those actually.
And that Gamazon, which I was like, I'm just going to make it to fit it and then I'll cover it later. And I never did. And it was like, it looked like it was awful. It was the worst.
So John DePercy sent that to me.
Oh, I love John.
I have to share one more picture too. But you keep talking.
No worries. Yeah. So the thing though that was really amazing about all of that, and like I said, it's a ton of work. People often look at royals and think, oh, they get to do cool stuff, and it's, oh, I love this picture.
So Kalja just sent me this.
Oh, that's awesome. That's at Estrella. Oh, that was such fun. That really was. Leading on the field of war, is one of my happiest times as ruler, because you're just getting to do the thing you love with the people that you love, and there's not work. It's just about the play. Anybody who's not ruled, it's easy to look at it and say, you get to do a lot of cool things, you get given cool things, all of that. I think it's easy to miss how much work it is. It is like relationships get crushed in the mill of ruling. It's no small feat. But the thing that is a constant, whether you're being baroness or being princess or being queen, is you get to acknowledge amazing people. And the coolest things about ruling really are the fact that you get to shine light on people. And I love that you get to have people see the people who do and create and give, and have them be celebrated. Like giving out cool awards to people. That's epic. This is such a great picture. And I'm still wearing those awful pants. And I was like, I'm like, it's just the worst.
I was gonna say the pants are on you again.
They're the worst. Well, it's before I was a squire. They never appeared again. I took my vows serious.
I'm gonna stop the share, but people love you so much that we're getting all these pictures. I'm like, okay, but they're good. They're good pictures. So we love it. People keep sending pictures. It's great.
I'm so honored. Everybody is so awesome. Well, and that's the cool thing is, like, when you asked me to send pictures, one of the things that I really realized, and I actually went through and sent out a bunch of messages to people, because I realized that I have a lot of pictures of me in the SCA because other people take the time to record our awesomeness, because I never take pictures at events. I super suck at that.
I don't either.
Yeah. And so, but I even have a picture of getting my AOA, because there's always these people in the SCA who take the time to capture these moments. And so I have this wealth of images of me in every single reign and all these cool moments that are entirely because of the generosity of people who like to capture our excellent moments in the SCA. So yeah, I'm super, I say it every time I reign, but I mean, it is just the debt that I feel like I owe to the people who I've shared this game with. I know that even if I played for 1,000 years, I could never repay it. It's just not possible to give back in the face of such generosity and just such cool behavior on the part of a lot of people. So.
Well, one of the things though that's pretty remarkable about you is how much you invest of your time and your talent into making things for other people. And I mean, not just Scribble, but you did all the costuming for Asni and Ivar. And you do stuff like that all the time, and Pelican, Laurel, Duchess. So I think, I think it's pretty even. I could be wrong, but but it is sort of amazing that you can find the time to do that and work full time, and raise a kid. And I mean, it's a lot.
Well, I kind of cheat a little bit, and I know that Master Torfin's wife can say the same. And he and I both don't sleep a ton, and so she always calls it his half-life. And I don't need a ton of sleep, and so like when I was doing Kelwyn's Scroll, I slept maybe 4 hours a night. I can operate under that, not for a long time. Like the wheels fall off at a certain point. Trust me, I'm like absolutely human. Do not get mistaken about that. But I have the ability to sort of borrow from future Michelle or future Inga to the benefit of now Inga. And so part of it is I don't sleep a ton. The other thing though, and so this is something I sort of alluded to when you were talking about all the different art I do, is that I feel like a lot of people, when they're creating, a lot of what is their barrier to creating is them doubting themselves. And the one gift that I got from my mother as an artist is that I never doubt that I should make the thing. So all I need to do is say in my head, I need to get a picture of what I want to do. And then there's not hesitation. I just start drawing. I start painting. Like the very first runestones I ever carved were a pair of stones that I carved for Torfin and Colfina. And, they turned out really beautiful. I'm quite proud of them. And somebody said, how long have you been carving soapstone? I said, well, that's it. Those are my first ones. They said, why would you start with period scroll? I'm like, why wouldn't I? Because if it turned out great, then boom, right? And so I think that's part of my one of the things that is my asset in this is that I'm pretty fearless in the face of creating. I always go in with the idea of, well, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, maybe to be brilliant. If so does
And
that,
also, why not a period scroll? What really matters is that you're putting your love and your time and your energy and your talent and your creativity into it. Like, I've made something for Laurel in once, and like that was really daunting because she can make anything better than almost anybody in the whole world.
Yep.
But she appreciates just that you did it because she knows how much time it takes.
Yep.
So, that would be my thing, like to anybody out there, why not a peerage scroll?
Yep.
Start big, put your love in it, and the person you give it to is gonna freaking love it.
Yep.
I don't know about everyone else, but I've never made a thing and had someone go, oh, I guess it's okay. Like, I'm sure there's people out there that would do that. Maybe I've just been fortunate, but I figured just go for it. And honestly, I mean, you all, the three of you know me, outside of the SCA well enough to know that that's kind of how I do life in general, is I just go for it. And that's not to say it always goes well. There's stuff that I have to start over again. And, I also gum things up. But part of the reason I get so much done is I'm fearless in making things. I always just go, cool, let's just go do it. Let's make it happen. Like, okay, I'm going to gild a thing. Cool, let's gild a thing. I want to carve a 60-pound stone. Sure, I could do that. How can I do that? Let's make that happen. And I think that that's part of, and it's the same as, do I want to be Baroness? I've never done it, but sure, that sounds cool, and so I don't, not to say I don't have self-doubt and question, I mean, all of that, but I'm pretty fearless in just going full into something. And I think that's part of why I make so much stuff, is because I don't spend a lot of time doubting myself.
Right. Things are never going to be perfect, but you're really the only person that's going to see your mistakes because you're the one that's looked at it for 60 hours, right?
Totally.
I don't know. I wish people would get over it. Like, people always go, I can't believe you're cutting into that fabric. And I'm like, it's just fabric. Yes, it was expensive. And if I fuck up, I'm probably going to be sad for about, a half an hour, and I'll put it aside, and then I'll figure out how to make it work. Just
exactly.
being fearless. And you're on mute, Kelvin. Being fearless is important in every aspect of your life.
Totally. Honestly, part of the reason why I've done so many different things, and people often comment, like, people, when they find out that I make glass beads, they're like, why did you, and did glass beads? Why? Well, I wanted some. And at the time I didn't have a lot of money. So I'm like, well, how hard could it be? So I learned to make them. Glass is intrinsically pretty. Even if they were crappy beads, it's still going to be prettier and shinier than the ones that I didn't have. So I think that's always been that really is a fundamental part of my SCA process, is just, let's give her and we'll see. And, if you mess it up, make apologies, fix it, whatever, but just go all in, because I feel nothing cool is ever achieved by being, half in, half out.
Yeah. And how are you ever going to discover whether you like something if you don't just give it a try? And if you don't like it, don't do it anymore.
Well, that's like period cooking. That's my new thing. And if anybody who knows me in my real life, I'm a disaster. Like, when it comes to like our staff parties at work, I get asked to bring things like oranges because I'm not trusted with food. Like, I gave my very first husband, I've been married previously, I gave my first husband food poisoning on 2 separate occasions. Like, I am not renowned to be a cook of any sort. But when it's period cooking, I'm like, well, we are doing the Vication and it's super cool and we need to feed people. And I know lots about it because I research Viking. And so how hard could it be? And so, like, the first time I made cheese, we're at an event and everybody's like, this is amazing. How many times you've done it? This time. This is right now is the time that I have done it. I just go for it. And I think that's why I get so much done, really. And then, thanks to my mom. So
when you were elevated to your respective peerages, did that elevation give you any pause? Was there any mind fuckery when you got elevated, or did it just kind of smooth transition for you?
I think peerages are always a little bit of an adjustment. When I give advice at vigils, I always say that getting a peerage is kind of like someone having knit you a really, really cool sweater. It's super beautiful and you super love it, but it doesn't entirely fit you just yet. And you kind of have to wear it a bit before it fits. And I think that's true of everybody. I never doubted my skill in terms of my art, but I did doubt whether or not I could live up to the commitment I made when I took those oaths. And so I waited a while to take on dependence. I think the biggest thing was adjusting to how other people saw me. And I think that's one of the things that is can be the hardest part about being a peer, is that people's perception of you changes in good and bad ways. But that was hard. And there are times when I kind of wish I wasn't, just because it's a lot, you know, especially being a royal peer and the founding baroness of my barony. So I'm invisible. Like, I'm never invisible. I remember being Tanista at Ursulmus, and it was actually William of Kent was king. And he knew that I just got my AOA and then was made princess. And he's like, you're never going to be invisible again. I hope that you're okay with that. Because I tried to dodge court and feast, because I'm like, I haven't stepped up yet. Like, I just want to hang out with my buddies and fight. And he's like, oh, no, you never get to be invisible again. I'm like, well, thanks so much. But anyways, they went for pizza and I had to eat the feast. I mean, it ended up being lovely, but in my mind, I had to eat the feast because I just wanted to have pizza with my friends, right? But that's one of the hardest things, is I feel like I'm never not visible, and every peerage just makes it more so. So I think that's part of the reason why I've stayed so active in my art and also my service, is because when I focus on the thing that I do to bring me joy, it doesn't let the work of the peerage sort of take away from the joy of it. Because otherwise it can really feel like a job. It really can. So I think that was a big adjustment for me, is both as Laurel as Pelican, is it just felt like a different microscope. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So can you tell us the story of the wooden eye?
Oh my God, who dialed that one in? You not say it.
It's been me.
Oh, is it from you? Awesome. So so there was a quad war, and my boyfriend at the time, Vic, had gone out ahead of me. I had to work, and so he'd gone out, I think a day, maybe a full day, maybe 2 days, I don't know. He'd gone out ahead of me, and they were going to get everything set up, and then I was going to drive out. And so I finally arrive on site, and everything's sort of set up and everything. But the kids in the area that we're camping here keep coming up to me, and they're looking at me like, they're like really looking at me, and they're asking me all sorts of weird questions, and they're like really engaging with me. And I like kids, like I love kids, but they were being really weird. And so I go back to camp afterwards. I'm like, what is with the kids right now? Like, is there something going on? And Vic just about falls out of his chair laughing. He's like, I told them that you had a wooden eye, and if they could tell me which one it was, I would give them a quarter. So I have no idea why he came up with that, but he just decided this was going to be, I mean, he's known for his shenanigans. And so the kids, like for years after that, would be like, whichever eyes is wood, because like they both look really super real. And he had them convinced. So so it gets better. So Beathuk, who is a renowned storyteller in Avacal, was down in Artemisia at a war, and they were, you know, battling the Artemisians, and he took an oath. He's like, by Inga's wooden eye, we will be victorious on the field today. And everybody's like, by Inga's what? And so, so he tells the story. So now it's everywhere, right? And so I was presented the next time in court, he presented me with this little box with this little tiny wood eye that was painted the same blue as my eye, as my wooden eye, so that I could present it whenever it was brought up. And I still have it. I drag it around with me everywhere, because it's just like, I just think it's hilarious. But yeah, it was because Vic was up to shenanigans and told all the kids in our barony that I had one wooden eye, and that he'd give them money if I could tell him which one it was. So good times.
So going from that story to something a little bit more serious, tell us about how it was being one of the first kings and queens of Avacal, and like shaping culture there. And I know that, you know, there's been growing pains a little bit, and you don't have to talk about anything that you don't want to talk about, but just, you know, because we're trying to record a little bit of history too. And
absolutely. So I was actually part of the team that worked on the bid to become the bud. Sorry. The bid.
Touch the butt.
Drink time.
And the wooden eye.
I gotta get my wooden eye. And so that's so funny. You kill me. Anyways, so I was part of the team that was part of the bid. And one of the reasons that I had been asked to be part of it is because I was known to be, I would say, well, maybe a little unenthused about the prospect, because there was a lot of people who were like, we need to be a kingdom. And they felt it was good to have the team be composed of maybe people who might be saying, what about this? What about that? And my love of Ontir and my connection to Ontir is so profound. And so I agreed to it, was saying, okay, I'm going to be the eye that says, let's see, right? My wooden eye was on it. And so, I was part of the team. And then when we fought in the first list, I know Arnbjorn really, really wanted us to win that day. And so, we both, I think, felt like having been, because he was also part of the bid process, giving outside, because he said he'd reigned as Baron down in Stromgard. So we both were sharing insight with the process to try and make sure that Avacal was moving towards it in a ready state, right? And so we both then really wanted to be part of shaping that initial culture. So we did aspire to win. We won the third crown. And so the thing that was really interesting, though, is I still remember very clearly when they announced in court that Avacal was going to be a kingdom. And I will be completely transparent, and you know the story, Rifkin, so I appreciate you gave me an out, but I think it's important to talk about all these things. For me, it was really hard because I felt like I was losing Ontir. And but I also was the only countess in Avacal at that time. And so I was visible in a way, like I remember when I put in my my response to the bod and you're supposed to declare all your different periods. So I'm like, well, I might as well just put my name on it because I'm the only one of this. So they're going to know it's me, right? Like I felt like I was, again, I was so visible. And so I remember they announced it in court, and I went up to my room and had a cry. I was happy to become our own kingdom, but I was heartbroken to lose Ontir. And I remember my lovely husband coming to me and patting me on the hand and saying, okay, you need to wipe away your tears, and you need to put on your best dress, and you need to go down and celebrate moving forward, because you don't have the luxury of indulging in your emotion in this moment, because you're a multiple peer, and you're the one and the only countess of Avacal. You need to be present and seen to support this. And sometimes putting on your big gold panties sucks. It does. But that said, like anything, when I decided that this was happening, I was 100% in. And so I immediately started working on, how do we create regalia so that when we have our first crown, it looks impressive, and how do we contribute? So Arnsbjorn and I both really worked with Albrecht and Nishida, who were our first king and queen, to create that presence, that kingdom weight. And so, we both really put a lot of heart into that. So when we got to reign, I felt like that was a beautiful full circle. We got to be part of trying to create that culture. And I am deeply proud of what Avacal has done. I feel like, there's always going to be bumps and wiggly bits and all of that, but I feel like we have established a culture. People have always said when they come to Avacal, it feels different than in Ontir. And I know, Rifkin, you've said that, and so has Kelwin to me. And I'm sure, Shoxy, you've felt that too. And I think that we've really embraced that. And so I am so deeply proud of us. And that said, with all of the reluctance I had, all of that reluctance had nothing to do with Avacal's readiness or the people's readiness for it. It was all about me. I wanted to be, I want to be a knight of Ontir, because a knight of Ontir is, that's an iconic thing. Not to take away from being a knight of Avacal. I'm proud to have knighted people when I was queen. I don't want to just, seem like I'm dismissing that at all. But from the day I started, and from the moment I recognized that I loved fighting, being a knight of Ontir meant something it was so big. And so letting go of that, it was really hard. And I needed to wrap my brain around the fact that that was about me. And when I saw what the potential was in us becoming a kingdom, all of a sudden it was amazing. And I am, so proud of the kingdom and so proud of what we've done. And I am really proud of how we are both honor our history with Ontir, but that we also have forged our own path that is uniquely ours. And so I am deeply proud to have ruled Avacal, and deeply proud to have been a part of those starting steps of creating our culture. So but you know, I like to be honest. There's moments that aren't always easy when you love something so much. And now you know, when the time comes and I become a Knight of Avacal, now I know it is going to be the biggest thing in my heart to be part of that, because now I get to add my name to that legacy. And you know, I always, like, sort of funny, I'm in a different kingdom. I didn't even move. I'm in the same city I started in, right? So and so it's not, it's a sentimental thing, but it's not a sad thing. And I think it's important to talk about those times when we have to let go of one dream, because sometimes when we let go of one dream, we get to embrace another. And now I get to have a different path. So
I think it's really important to talk about. You know, I don't have the connections to both kingdoms that you have, but I have some. And I cried too, because, and I miss everybody coming down here. I miss it so much. It completely transformed the way the game is played. But when you look at modernly what's going on in our world with the border closed, and our political situation is nosediving worse and worse, I'm afraid Thierry is going to have to make some really difficult decisions. And I think it's important to acknowledge how hard it is and how painful it is, and that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, you know. And yes, I mean, losing all of Avacal, you know, not that we've really lost you, but that was so hard, and it would be hard to have the same thing happen with Thierry.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we it's the interesting thing of when we're recreating history, we forget that those worlds also had great border changes and shifts and changes as well, and it's intrinsically part of history that where we call home also changes. And so, you know, to me, I feel like it was a good point of personal growth for me, and I know my game is richer for me acknowledging a certain level of selfishness in that initial reaction, but also really, like I said, I never do anything by half measures. That is me. And so now I am whole in for Avacal, but I needed to have a moment to cry. I mean, one of the hardest moments in my entire SCA career was kneeling in front of Savrik to return my fealty to Antir. I cried. But now when I swear to my crown in Avacal, I am right up front and you know, arms wide and the biggest smile, because I am so deeply proud of what my kingdom has wrought. I really am. So big question then.
Because I had the same thing happen because I was part of Eight and Belt, and then we went Kingdom. And you know, when you first start, you have all these dreams of being whatever of that kingdom, and then all of a sudden you're a different kingdom. And it's not that you don't still have the aspirations to be those things. It's just that when you first started playing, it was for that kingdom. So it is a little tough. And I still miss Eight and Belt, and it's been 25 years almost, or 23 years.
Well, and that's part of the reason why Orangeburn and I still go down to Antir so much. I mean, right up until the border closure, and we come down 3 or 4 times a year at least. I mean, in part, obviously, to spend time with Rifkin, obviously, because you're my heart, but also because there's so many people down there who define our game, and that's really important too. So I think we travel a lot, and that is, I think, also an important part of my game and why I love it so much. I mean, because of how much I travel, I've created scrolls and gifts and awards all over the known world, right? Like, that's cool stuff. So part of that is you know, is when you're fully engaged in not just your barony or not just your principality or not just your kingdom, but when in the whole of the SCA, it's different. Not that it's necessarily better, but it's different, and it certainly, you see things. Interkingdom anthropology is one of my favorites. I talk to Sean about this all the time. We geek about it. I know Sean and Edward and I sat when he came up here and just talked about all the differences between different kingdoms and all the different places we travel, and it's so cool. Like, that stuff, just, I geek about that.
That's one of the things I really love about doing all these interviews, is that I don't have the opportunity to travel as much as you, but I'm getting to know all these people, and you know, you don't get to know them, but it's probably more than I would if I went to a war and spent 10 minutes at the fire with them or 10 minutes on the field with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's just been so wonderful to see, like, there are differences, but there's so much more that's the same. And there's so many wonderful people everywhere. It's kind of awesome. We have this awesome society, and it's special.
It is. It is. And, I think as much as there are many things that draw us apart, I think there's more that draws us together.
I would agree 100% with that. You always know, if you know even one person in that area, you have somebody you can rely on to help you out if something goes wrong, or you have a network that can help you out. I remember when I had first started in the SCA, I broke down one time, and because I knew somebody who knew somebody, I was rescued. And it's all because of the SCA.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay.
So besides pursuing knighthood, what other goals do you have in the SCA, or what kind of things would you like to see happen that haven't happened yet?
So to me, I see our game as at this turning point. And just the way that our modern world is at a point where we are, whether we want to or not, and there's obviously some reluctance, and I don't want to delve into that, but we're embracing the concept of equity and diversity and inclusion. And, as you know, Rifkin, that's an important thing to me in my mundane life. I'm involved in a number of endeavors related to those pursuits. And so it's a passion of mine that is outside of the SAA, but I see we're at that point where we can create a game that is truly equitable in our treatment of people and inclusive. And so one of the things that I'm very keen on as a peer is to do the hard work to help shift that change. And it's something that I'm really passionate about here in Avacal. So that's really important to me. And that's a cultural thing. Orange Baron and I have endeavored for a while now to push that boundary of, our camp is a safe place, and we mean that. And that means that bad behavior is addressed publicly and dealt with, and good behavior is embraced and lauded, and that people are given a safe place to be. And it's part of the reason why we spend as much effort into our camps, is because we want to be that safe space. And I think that that bringing that broader than just our camp, but making sure that the kingdom is a place where we're equitable in treating people well, treating people as they wish to be treated. I think that's really important. So that's one of the things that I'm really very keen on. One of the other things, and it's sort of interesting that you brought it up, that aspect of history, is I've been, because of my role being the historian for 50 years, I became really connected with capturing the history of our kingdom. And so one of the things that's sort of my little side passions is trying to keep that, because we're brand new. So if we record it now, it won't be lost. And so that's one of the things that I'm really keen on, as well as is ensuring that the things that are these little treasures. I was watching your interview with Torgal, and him talking about those days where so few people and also with Ludwika, so few people know some of these stories. And so I want to make sure that we don't lose our stories. And so that's one of the things I'm working on. But to be honest with you, this is, right up until when the pandemic hit, this is now the realm of Inga's rare selfishness. I always make the choice to create for people I love and serve the kingdom I love, and put my own aspirations to the side. And now I've decided, because I'm 52, I've decided if I'm ever going to achieve my goals to be a knight, that I need to be just a little selfish. I mean, I still make tons of art and all that other stuff, but I mean, that's honestly part of me. I mean, I'm not happy if I'm not tremendously busy, but I've been making more choices to say, let me find someone who's capable of doing that instead of me doing it. And arguably, to me, that's being a better peer anyways. But I'm being a little selfish, and I have goals I want to achieve, and not the least of which I would really love to be the one that won for my husband. I don't know that I'll get to be the one who makes him a duke, because he needs one to do that. And he's got the chops. But I definitely would like to win for him, and I would love to be to add to that legacy in our kingdom of being a queen by my own hand. And so that is something that I realized that I've always said I wanted, but I keep letting other things be in front of, and I'm not allowing that to come second.
I don't think it's selfish to make your own dreams and goals a priority. I think it will make you a better peer, because I'm going to say hoarding, but that's not what I mean. You like you said, you find other people, and by finding other people, you highlight more, like, right, like,
You
um,
enable them.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and
You can mentor them.
I selfishly want to see you reach your potential, and I want you to go for it. You know, I do.
And
Well,
I think one of the really unique things that's coming out of everything that we're doing is you've got the coaches corner, and you've got these incredible teachers. My husband is online every single night doing Pell practice and teaching with people in Australia. I mean, it's crazy what's going on now. There's so many opportunities, and I'm super excited for you to take advantage of that and do the thing.
Well, and I'm also super spoiled is that unlike a lot of my friends who fight, I'm quarantined with a partner who also fights, who frankly loves fighting more than he loves almost anything else in the world. And like if right now I said, let's put on armor and fight, he would put on armor and he would fight. And so I have that gift. I really need to use, I need to not use, but I need to take advantage of that. I need to embrace that opportunity. So that's sort of where my goal is. And I feel like I can do those things because they don't take the same time. The challenge I've often had is that the things I want to do take the same time. And now what I'm looking at is things that don't occupy the same time and use different parts of me. And so I feel like that's a good choice. I'm probably still going to make buckets of scrolls. I mean, I just finished one. There's a fellow in the SEA who also is an AMP guard, and he just received his Crown Knight. And they contacted me and said, hey, I know it's, pandemic and all that, but could you make him a scroll? So I made him a scroll because, I love making cool stuff for people. And so, but the thing is I work quick enough that it's a couple nights worth of work, at which I'm sure there's scribes out there that are probably cursing me a little bit. I just work quick, and that my process is like that. That's the thing though that I want to mention. And so I've talked about how, I'm just all in when it comes to all my art, but I have a natural, like I worked very hard. I mean, I've spent most of my life as an artist, but I also have a natural aptitude with tools. Like I'm one of those people that if I pick up a tool and I see how it's used, I can replicate that right away. Like I have that facility, and I absolutely inherited that from my mother. I'm a super high level tool using monkey. And so if I can see it done, I can do the thing. Fighting is the only thing in my entire life that I've endeavored to do for which I do not have a natural skill. So every inch of skill I've gained there is hard earned. And that does sometimes mean that my ego has made me focus on the things that I naturally win at. I know if I make a scroll rather, I'm going to hold it up and people are going to be like, ooh, right? That's easy gold stars for Inga, right? Fighting is going to be work, and it also is, tremendously rewarding, and I love it, but it is not something I'm naturally good at. And a little tiny part of my ego has struggled with that, of doing something I'm not naturally good at. And that's part of it too.
And that is hard to give up sort of the more instant gratification. But this, and I don't need to tell you this, but the more you work on it, the better you're going to get, and the more gratification you're going to get from it, and the more rewarding it will be for you. And if you can let go of I know you're 52, but I only have.
I was 53 when I was knighted.
Yeah.
Fair.
I'm 52.
Fair enough.
I'm going to shut up.
If I can let go of that though, I know.
Let yourself fight.
Just remember the joy it brings you every time you step on the field, and it makes it a lot easier.
I mean, keep it, but don't keep it, right?
Well, and I think that's one of the things that is good about sort of resetting right now is that I think you reevaluate your priorities, and that definitely, I've had some big light bulb moments just in the past couple of weeks. about that. And honestly, watching the fight practices with Sven and Alexandros and Eric and Krim down in Wheelsmere, watching their weekly videos. Like, I'm sorry, even if you're a bit of a slacker, you watch those. If you're not inspired, you don't actually love fighting, because those guys fight at a level where, like, it is so cool. And so now I have this, I wonder if I can do that. Like, my brain now is starting to get back into putting the same level of detail and all in-ness that I applied everything else.
You know what the super cool thing, and not everybody can see those videos because they're private, but one of the super coolest things about that practice is that Sven and Alexandros like riff off each other, and they both innovate all the freaking time. And it's so cool to see fighters at that level still pushing their boundaries and taking their fight to different places. Super cool.
Yeah,
I Eric does too. I mean, they all do, but it's very, very cool to watch that happen.
Well, and that's one of the things that was so cool about the inlands practice that you've always been a big part of organizing, Rifkin, is you get to see people who have been playing forever, like Sean, like Sven, who are constantly challenging their art and innovating. And I think that's where the joy is where you don't just sit back and go, yeah, I'm good at this, I got this. And instead you go, but what if I did that? And I recognize that that's something I do in my art, and I just need to I admired in them, and I need to recognize that I have that same capacity within myself. I just need to choose to exercise that. And I think that most people do, but I think often we get stuck in the executing in that moment and not looking at how this is all part of us being our own innovator in our art.
And I think too, it's sometimes harder to be fearless in something that's physical, because you are a little worried of looking foolish, right? Like, because you can sort of guard your art until you're ready to share it, but you can't do that with fighting because there's the camera and it's going to get posted and everybody's going to see you fuck up.
I hate watching video of myself fighting. I always feel like I look just like the most oh my goodness, it's a disaster wrapped up in a suit of armor being hurled at someone. So
and it's totally not
bad, but that's, I mean, I'm also my worst critic, right? So anyway,
they all are.
Yeah, I just always feel like when I have our dog, we have a great big huge ridiculous black dog who is just the most uncoordinated creature on the planet. And when he goes down the stairs, we always say he doesn't go down the stairs. It's like he takes all his bones and throws it down the stairs in a dog suit and then reassembles himself at the bottom. And that kind of just random chaotic movement is like, that's how I always feel when I watch myself fight. I'm like, it's funny, but it's not inspiring. And so I need to get over myself about that and just do it. So
you should watch some of the videos of Gabe and I fighting. You won't feel so bad. Then you'll see me and you're like, hey, she does the same thing.
Well, part of it though is like anybody who's watched my husband fight, I mean, it's some kind of brutal ballet. I mean, Ashoksi, your husband's the same way. When you have someone that you fight with where they manage to make it look this weird combination of grace and art and brutality all in this, it's kind of daunting. And maybe that's what people mean when they, say they feel it's kind of daunting doing Scribble around me, because that's probably the same sort of, point of reference. But he's just so damn good at it. It's inspiring, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I look pretty rubbish next to him. It's my brain,
they are both really good at it. But watch videos sometime. I mean, Octa fails all the time, but he puts himself out there, and that's why he does those incredible things. And when he fails, he always laughs at himself. Like,
always laughs.
He teleports. I swear he teleports.
Well, Sven's the same way. Like, nobody laughs harder than Sven when he's been killed. Like, that guy is just
Timmer.
It's awesome.
Timmer, yeah.
Oh yeah, Timmer. Yeah, totally. It's
something that we haven't talked about that I really want to touch on with you is your camp, because you guys have invested a lot of time and energy and money into having this really period Viking camp, and you guys live all the way up in Edmonton, and you guys bring it all the way down to Ontario West, which is what, like a 20-hour drive?
28 hours.
28 hours. And it's, I mean, I felt really lame. Like the last On Tour West I went to, I live, I don't know, 12 hours from the site. And Arnsbjorn brought me a tent 28 hours from the site. I was very, very thankful. But can you talk a little bit about why that's important to you guys and what you did and how other people can inspire to do that, but in incremental ways?
Absolutely. So this is one of those things that sort of came about when Arnsbjorn and I became a couple, is that we both had always really loved the idea of having the space that feels right to do the things that are cool, right? That atmosphere matters, right? And that you know, the coolness of that space is really important. Both of us have traveled to Europe, and so we've seen some of the cool things that reenactors do there, and we've seen the living history spaces there. And so that's super inspiring to us, that creating a space that feels transformative. But the other thing for both of us is the idea of creating a space that is welcoming. So, you know, the creating a space not to be exclusionary, but to be inclusive. And so one of the things that Arnsbjorn has always said, people are like, oh, are you sure you mind us coming in? And he said, I didn't build all this stuff just so I can stand around and look cool in it. I built this to share with people, right? And that has always been a fundamental part of it. So, you know, and with building everything, it's always been built to be about community. And for me, for both of us, that's a big part of what is rich in the SCA. Is I don't want to just hang out with my close friends, although that matters to me, but I like that we can be part of making a space. Like, you know, one of the coolest moments I ever had at Quad War was when we were king and queen, and we invited all the newcomers that knelt in front of us. We give a little awards there for newcomers, and we invited all the newcomers back to our camp, and they came. And we grabbed all the feast of food out of the chest, and we put it all out, and we put meat on the fire. We put a great big pot of barley and root vegetables on the fire, and we had everybody back to our camp. And that is still one of the most singularly cool moments of my SCA time, because that's just the perfect example of our core philosophy about the SCA, which is let's build a space where people get to hang out and do cool stuff and talk about cool things. And so the best part about that is we had a bunch of new people sitting around with a bunch of people who've been playing for like 15, 20 years. And we're all talking about this cool research or that cool thing, or where did you find that? Or what is that based on? And then when you have a camp that, you know, and he's put so much effort into having these period appropriate or, you know, period-esque things around you, and he'll tell you like, oh, that's based off of the Lund stool, or that's based off of, right? So inherent with our experience is also talking about the history, and at both of our core is that history. You know, both of us, and honestly, he's better versed than I am. He reads all of the dig finds. I just like to read the captions and the pictures most of the time, to be honest. But he's all like, I want to know the science. And so we both love talking about what is the historical foundation, and especially because we both have traveled. Like, I've been to Scandinavia 4 times now. And so we have seen all these things in museums. And so honestly, it's totally self-serving, because I get to sit around and chat about all of the cool history I've seen and experienced and share that within an SCA context. So that's really important to us. That's like the whole reason we do stuff is based on that sharing of history. And we do that even in indoor events. So for example, one of the last events that was held in Avacal was at a big hotel, and there was one of my, well, it was Kettling, Mona Boucher was getting made a laurel, and so was Bieris de Romans. And so what Arnsbjorn did, and he did all the toting, I just did the planning. We brought tents down and set up space inside one of the ballrooms to transform that space into still being a medieval space. And so I think that, like, that to us is part of what makes things richer. A vigil is cool, but a vigil inside of a period tent with yummy food and cool lighting that makes it not feel like you're in a you know, a hotel is cooler, right? And so so that's a big part of why we play. In terms of how to do it, we have a super simple philosophy. People always look at it and they're like, I couldn't do that. And, you know, that'd be like trying to eat an elephant in one bite. You know, people forget that we have had 10, 15, 20 years to build this. And what we say is change one thing. So it's very simple. Between now and the next event, change one thing. Get a new cup that looks more authentic. Get a cool, maybe a hat that covers the fact that you feel like your hair doesn't look, you know, medievally, or get shoe covers that'll hide the fact that you have to wear, you know, sneakers to be comfortable or whatever. But just do one thing. But if you do one thing, every event, it's not actually, it's achievable. And one of the things that we always talk about is how inexpensive a lot of things that we do are. Like the boxes, they're just made out of pine, and they don't even have, they can have rope closures, right? Like it doesn't have to be expensive. You just have to be intentional about it. And so that's also part of our philosophy, is if somebody says, oh, I don't even know how I do that, our idea is, let me send you the plans, or let me show you how you could do it, and it's going to cost you X. So we're really big on, it shouldn't have to be expensive. It's just a matter of being intentional, and really that idea of just do one thing every time. And then we still do that. Now we say, okay, before next event, we want to replace X because maybe it's wearing out, or we want to fix the legs on that bench because every time someone sits on it, it falls down, right? But like do something between every event. And then then you're not trying to eat that elephant in one big bite.
I love that. I really love the idea of a newcomer's mixer. I think that is incredible. And that now I'm trying to think, like, how can I make that work? And I want to make it work with my little name tag idea where, it says, hi, I'm Rithkin, talk to me about fighting in applique or whatever.
I love that idea. I love like, let's boom, bring those two together. I love it.
My name's Inga, talk to me about Scribble and Axes.
Exactly. I would super talk about Axes.
I love that. I'm going to think on that and think of how to implement that, because it's just such a great way to let people know they're welcome, and to get people excited about things you're excited about, and not intimidated. I think, that's one of the things that I think most people's bad experiences with peers, they'll be like, oh, it's really more about intimidation. And if we could just sort of make ourselves more approachable, I think a lot of that bad experience would go away. Because I don't think anybody, well, there might be like 1%, is intentionally an asshole.
But they don't have to be a peer to be that.
Right.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So I love that. That's such a great thing. And that you guys did it as Crown is amazing.
Thank you. We're really proud of that. It's one of his happy, because our reign was a lot of work. We had 4 months to fit everything in. It was a dead run, and we were both super done by the end. But that moment was near the start of the reign, and we had just come back from Pennsic, and we were just like, it was one of those golden moments. I still remember very clearly the sun setting, and somebody had come by with bagpipes, and he was playing just outside of the entrance to our camp, because we have little gates so that people know, where to sort of come in. So because if you have gates, it also can be welcoming, right? It's not closed, it's open. And the party around our fire and around all the snacks and poured out, and he's playing, and everybody is clapping and singing, and all I can see is smiles. And the sun was setting, so everybody is sort of lit up with that golden light. And it just, I remember Arnsborn came over and he like grabbed my hand. He goes, this is the magic. And I'm like, I know. It was just that memory actually sustained us through some pretty monumentally stressful parts of our reign. I'll be completely honest. That's like a little treasure I lock in my heart, honestly. So the thing that we do though that is really cool, and this is, my husband's pretty brilliant on this, is the way we design our camp. So we always have the firebox is the center of the space, and it is directly and openly accessible from the gate. And we don't do like a gate that closes, but we always have like an arch. So it's usually like 2 spears or something like that. So you know where to come in, because that also helps, right? Because then you're not accidentally intruding, because sometimes you get a bad reception because you just walk through the middle of somebody's kitchen and they're trying to make dinner or something, right? So we make it clear, like this is the in part, but then it's open, and then there's a fire. So if you come by, you can see us and we can see you, and you're welcomed in. And so I think part of it is that design. And I know Kvigor and Svava often camp with us, and our camps are actually designed to sort of mirror each other. So now the fires join. So we have a really long fire and then tents all around. And it just creates that space where it isn't closed, it's open. And fire is if you have a fire, if you have light, automatically people go to it. I mean, that's just human, right? So.
Like moths.
Totally. Well, and we always try to have food on. Like I love making period food, and we do like dishes like, buckwheat, where you can make it and 5 hours later it's still delicious even if it's cold, and we just leave it in a big cast iron pot on the stove. So if somebody's sitting there like, I'm kind of hungry, I got to get going, say, if you like, you can have a meal with us. And we actually have a really cool thing. Torin's wife, they don't really play anymore, but she's a potter and she's always making all this pottery to keep herself entertained, and she needs it to go somewhere. So what she's done is made us like 30 guest cups. So we have a giant chest full of guest cups. So if you come in and you don't have a period cup, we just give it to you. And if you bring it back, great. If you don't, that's also fine, because she just charges us the base material. So it's a thing where she does that because she wants us to be able to do that. And so we just give them away. And I feel like those sort of gestures, like, didn't cost us that much. In fairness, we are people with, significant means, and so we can speak from that privilege. And I think that's kind of our expectation, is because we have that privilege, we should make sure to exercise it in a positive way. And so having things like that so that people feel like they're welcome, they can stay, they don't want to have their popcorn, they feel awkward about it, we can give them a cup. If they're hungry, they can have food, right? So really embracing that honestly very Norse concept of true hospitality.
Yeah, I think it's important that, that people don't feel pressured to do things that are outside their means. But if you have the means and it's something that you want to do, by all means do it. People get weird about stuff like that because they feel like you're pressuring them to do something maybe they're not capable of doing. And I wish that people wouldn't take it that way, because not everything is about me or about you. It's about trying to do something nice. Does that make sense?
It totally does.
Okay.
I think part of it is that it doesn't hurt that we're both really vocal about it. And so, if you leave it for people to determine, they may bring their own bias to that, and they may say, oh, it's meant to be this or it's meant to be that. So we just tell them, come on in, have some food, have some drink. We're sharing our fortune with you. And so then it doesn't make it a pressure thing. And, we even have things like, if people want to camp with us, but they don't have period tents, we have big sailcloths that we can put up so they can still camp with us. And we just put up a sailcloth, so it's sort of a barrier, so they don't have to feel like they're, sort of a sour note in our camp, but they're still part of our camp. And so, I think it's those little things where if you have the means, and I say all the time, I recognize that I speak from a place of considerable privilege, but by virtue of that, I feel like it's important that I use my privilege in a way that enriches the game.
Very cool.
Thank you.
We're almost at 2 hours, believe it or not.
Wow.
Have we missed anything big that you would like to talk about?
I have one cool story that I think is kind of neat that a lot of people don't know is I was put on vigil for my laurel by Thorin and Dagmir and elevated by Skeggi and Taja. And I was put on vigil for my pelican by Skeggi and Taja and elevated by Thorin and Dagmir. Which is...
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like that stuff, how often does that happen? And so, I just think that's neat. It doesn't really change anything, but it's still, I just think it's wacky. I think it's really kind of neat. So, and I'm very proud of those people.
Funny, you always have an affinity with the crowns that give you awards. Like you do. There's just like this sort of kinship.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
I think.
Well, and they're neat people too, right? Like honestly, especially Thorin. No disparagement to anyone else in that very excellent grouping, but to have Thorin be someone of his measure and presence and on tier be such a big part of my path. I get a little, yeah, about that. So
He's amazing. I don't think he understands how amazing he is,
or how valued he is.
Yeah. You are very, very valued, Your Grace.
Yes, deeply.
If
Your
you're
Grace.
wondering,
I miss you dearly.
Yeah, we all miss you.
Awesome. Is there anything that Ashoxi or Kellen still wanted to ask me?
We didn't really talk about your service and your pelican, but it's quite obvious that a lot of your service is tied up in your arts and in your hospitality, and the fact that you have done multiple reigns. Being a baron and baroness is probably, they say, one of the hardest jobs in the SCA. So
Can confirm. I also have been an officer of like a bunch of different flavors. I was Principality Scribe, Royal Kingdom, like the Principality Scribal office for ever. So, you know, I've also done a lot of office. I was seneschal. Actually, I ended up being seneschal a totally funny way. The seneschal in our group had gotten removed for some sketchiness. And the Baron at the time came to me and said, hey, you've got a membership, don't you? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, could you be a seneschal? I'm like, what is that? And he goes, oh, you'll be fine. And so I agreed to be a seneschal and I had no idea what it entailed. And that was a learning curve. So yeah.
My first bout as seneschal was the same. It was like, what's that? Okay. And then it was like, oh, what have I done?
I've never been a seneschal.
It's a ton of work. It's a ton of work. It really is.
I feel like that's what I do mundanely, and I don't want to jump into that in the society. But your husband is very, very adamant that we ask you if a Pell can hit back.
If a Pell can hit back. So he's so mean. So not that long ago, we were starting to get back into training and we're working on things, and we've been working on some technique and power generation, you know, unsurprisingly, because I'm not a person of you know, huge stature, is a challenge. And we've been working on a technique, and I was out there doing drills on the Pell without any armor. I just had my sword, and I threw a shot and I got the mechanics perfect. And the sword bounced back and hit me right in the face and broke my nose. And so what had happened is he was watching me literally glance to the side for, I mean, he says 30 seconds to, I think, the look at the dog who was running around like a fool in our yard or something like that, and turned around to me lying in the ground holding my face. And he's like, leave you alone for 5 seconds. What the heck? And so I managed to catch it. Now, fortunately, I've broken my nose a few times. I mean, I played hockey, right? And I had an exciting 20, my 20s were exciting. But I broke my nose right across the bridge. I caught the sword right in the bridge of my nose. And just from the rebound, like, thank goodness, I don't know. Anyways, and it hurt a lot. And I've broken my nose. I think this is like the 6th or 7th time I've broken it. That sucked. Like, yeah, that was super not awesome. But I'm fine. And, you know, honestly, it kind of straightened out because the last time I broke it, it didn't set quite right. So I kind of fixed it a little bit, but I don't recommend that kind of percussive maintenance. It's I wouldn't recommend it as a medical procedure. Yeah, he was like, I swear to God, I took my eyes off you for 2 minutes. So I'm not allowed to do Pell work without a helmet anymore. He's like, I don't care how terribly clever. And if you're just mucking around, you're wearing a helmet. It is just not allowed, because otherwise.
When you're working power generation too, it's okay to use a soft sword. I'm just putting it out there.
You won't have to wear your helm, but
now you know what it feels like for that power generation to work perfectly.
Absolutely. Well, and this is also one of those things where, you know, you say be careful about doing things when you're tired. We had been fighting and I kitted down, and, you know, we're in half armor and you're tired, you're mucking about. And so you're not necessarily as careful as you would be, and just pounded myself right in the face. And so I had a beautiful blue. I mean, we were also working from home at that point. So fortunately, my coworkers didn't get to tease me about yet another horrific injury because they hassled me forever about when I got my ribs broken. So which was actually your husband, Ashoksi, is the one who broke my ribs. That's forever ago, and he still feels terrible about it. But I get teased horribly about the fact that everyone else in my office is very sensible and proper and respectable business people, and that I have a picture of myself in armor on my desk. The students think it's funny, but my coworkers are just like, she's not sensible. She's not a sensible person. So, yeah, so that's the Pels do sometimes hit back.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us and participating. It's been really great talking to you, and the 2 hours really just flew by. So I really appreciate that. And it's been kind of great to spend time with, you know, 3 of my favorite people.
Well, I got to tell you, like the two hours just zoomed by. I mean, I love the 3 of you. Anyways, I mean, every time we've traveled together, it's just been amazing. So I got to tell you, I was just over the moon when you asked me. I thought I get like definitive time to visit. Honestly, it feels like you gave me a gift. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
and thanks for inviting me along. It was great.
Yeah. Thank you, Selwyn.
Yeah, thank you.
Sound did weird things. And thank you everyone for joining us. You know, it's nice to know we're not talking into a vacuum. Next week, we're going to have Viscount Sagan on. He's called the Kingmaker. He lives in Artemisia now, but he is responsible for the development of many Dukes of the West.
And Artemisia.
and we're going to learn a little bit more about him and maybe a little bit less about the training philosophy you guys have all heard from him from the Coach's Corner. So that should be cool. And then Saturday, I am talking to Duke Edward the Grey of Lochleven. I think I said that right. From the East, who's a really interesting dude. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well. And Ishaxi.
Well, you have Damon on Sunday, right?
Oh, and I have His Royal Majesty Damon of Artemisia on Sunday. And then
Cool.
Monday, I have His Grace Xerxes from Callantyr, who I've heard is just a kick. So I have a full plate coming
And
up.
then I've got Tuesday covered with Jilliana from Arnhold in Artemisia. So it's kind of Artemisia week.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kelvin, for making it a trifecta.
Who are they doing on Grace Under Pressure on Sunday? Do you know?
They are actually looking, I think, still to fill this Sunday.
Okay.
Well, maybe they need to throw Cortland in there.
If you're a Duchess and
We've
you want
been
to be
working
in
on her.
She might have said yes. So you can make it all Artemisia.
I'll have to check in with her again.
or what about Nisa?
Or Tiana.
Those would be great people to talk to.
They've got Nisa scheduled for another time already. But
Okay. Anyway, come join us, have more fun, and we'll see you all later. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.